Okay, welcome everyone to the March joint BAC PAC meeting. Today's date is March 2nd, 2026. It's 7:02 p.m. My name is Alan Gonzalez. I'm the transportation planner that serves as the staff liaison for the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And I'll hand it off to Cynthia Palmer and Ambar, who are the chairs of the committees.
All right, thanks, Elwin. I'm Umber, by the way. I'm the PAC chair for the quarter, so nice to see you all. It's Umber, pronounced like lumber, if we haven't met. Cynthia, did you want to? I'm sure everyone knows you though, but did you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Cynthia Palmer, and I'm with the BAC, and we're gonna skip intros for this meeting just because there are so many of us and there's a lot of ground to cover. But please introduce yourself when you speak up in the discussions. You could say who you are. So why don't we get started? Um, and the first thing on our agenda, Vision Zero program update, sorry, with Christine Baker.
Thanks, Cynthia. We'll try to keep it upbeat too.
Yeah.
I'm sharing my screen now. Let me know when you can see it.
Yep.
Good. Awesome. All right. Well, I am here. Thank you, Elwin, for looping me in. And this was great timing for a meeting because we are prepping the first draft of our Vision Zero action plan. So I will talk a little bit about the action plan update status. And then we'll really kind of focus on the draft action items that you all reviewed, I think, last month. And I just got feedback last week. And then we'll talk about next steps and kind of what the rest of the road to our new action plan looks like. So starting with a quick update, we started this process in the fall, kind of summer fall, and we did our first public engagement in October. And that public engagement really focused on like what's going well, what do people like from Vision Zero, what's not going well, where can we improve. So the big focus for this action plan update wasn't really changing the goals or our mission. You know, those are very well established. We know what we're working towards. It's fewer crashes. It's more, it's safer ways to get around. But kind of how we get there is what we wanted to focus on. So we got really great feedback. We've been using that to create a draft of the action plan document, as well as really focus in on new action items. What is going to be different, streamlined, advanced within the next plan. So we talked with the external stakeholder group in January, which both the BAC and the PAC have representatives who were there. So big thank you for your engagement. And that was kind of the very first preview of these raw draft action items. Like they've been through a lot of internal vetting, but it was the first time we were sharing them outward. And we just went through a month-long feedback period where we got feedback from the external stakeholder groups, and we got lots of great feedback. Most of it trickled in at the end of last week, so I don't have an update on what it looks like with that feedback, but I'm just kind of here to share the draft and kind of talk about what you all shared back with us. And then we are planning to bring this out to the public in April. So the draft action plan, the entire document with some placeholders for any future coming information, will be shared. We'll have another meeting with the external stakeholder group, and we'll also meet with Transportation Commission to share that draft action plan. Then we'll take all the feedback we get in April and use that to finalize the plan. We'll go back to the Transportation Commission and then go to the board. So that's kind of the overall timeline, and we're really excited. The plan itself will have this content. So this is kind of the outline of what you'll see in the new action plan. We'll talk about our commitment to Vision Zero. So the county's commitment from the board, from the staff, from the community, the goals, and kind of talk about what the current program looks like. Then it'll dive into our progress so far. So we want to show what progress we made towards the first set of 90 plus action items in the 2021 action plan. We'll talk about the investments we've made in infrastructure, what those outcomes look like. We'll share crash data, kind of revisit that equity analysis we did at the beginning of the program and talk about public feedback. And then the final chapter is our path to zero by 2030. and we'll cover, the key themes, action items, and how we're going to track them. So that's kind of what you can expect to see in the plan. When we went out to the public, we got, and this was throughout the month of October, we had 300 some feedback form responses. We did a lot of pop-ups because we know right now people aren't as engaged online. So we tried to do a lot in person, and we got over 1,200 interactions, which was great. Did lots of lawn signs. We had library kiosks with mail-in forms, and we did an open house. So with all that, we talked to people about what types of crashes we're seeing, what the data reflects, and then compare that to what people are seeing in their real lives. And the things that kind of pop for people were, there's, distracted driving issues. They doubled down on speeding and aggressive driving. And then lots of people shared location specific issues, which we were able to kind of break into themes. We also talked about the Vision Zero initiatives, like what's working well, what do you notice on the streets? And people really noticed things like quick builds, the school zone improvements, automated safety enforcement. People really liked quick builds. We heard people wanting to, see more of that. And then the thing that, people did notice was the behavior change campaigns, but not quite as much as the others. So that gave us an indicator of like an area where we can definitely improve. We asked people how they wanted to hear from us, and we heard, people really liked public signage. We do lots of different types of signage out in the right of way, and it's very accessible. People can see it and then connect with the program. People also use the website, and a good chunk of people didn't connect with Vision Zero at all. So gave us an idea of where we can improve some of the communications. And then we asked people, what will it take to reach zero crashes and zero severe and fatal crashes by 2030. And overall, prevent distracted driving was the top thing we heard. People also really wanted to see more enforcement and manage speeds. So that was the big overall engagement findings. And this is the draft program structure. So I know we have talked about what is Vision Zero in so many words, and it's really hard to explain because there's so much happening. And this was the program structure graphic that we have created. We're still kind of working on it, but we wanted to show in the plan, like this is what the program looks like and will look like going forward. And it kind of lumps it into things that we do to identify crash or risk or safety risks. So that's, analysis, all the work that we do through community engagement as well. And so that looks like, action spots, systemic crash analysis, equity analysis, high injury network audits, and prioritization. We do critical crash reviews, weekly crash reviews, and we look at community reporting. How we address crashes, that's kind of the implementation piece. So we do quick build construction, capital improvement projects, tactical quick build work, projects through repaving, pilot projects, automated safety enforcement, safe routes to school, speed management, behavior change campaigns, traffic signal modifications, which we're going to start to communicate out a little bit better this year. I'm excited. And then policy changes. And then we track. So we want to make sure that what we do is making an impact. And that's how we share, information with you on our progress. So, the dashboards, before after studies, the newsletter, the reports we create. And then the resources that kind of all of this pivot around are things like our guidelines and standards, the toolkit, the engineering toolkit, and the public engagement toolkit. So this is your Vision Zero at a glance, and the partners that we work with. So all the draft action items that we're about to run through all are kind of in addition to this. So all of this will still happen within the program. It's not going to be called out with a specific action item anymore because it's part of the structure of the program itself. So anything that we talk about now is kind of like an add-on to what is happening within the overall structure of Arlington's Vision Zero program. The draft action items we've developed through working sessions internally, as well as with the interdepartmental stakeholder group and the external stakeholder group. We have 26 draft action items to start. We've organized them into tentative categories: engineering, engagement, behavior change, and plans and policies. But we're not married to these at this point. It's just always a way for us to kind of organize our thoughts. So that's another area where we are looking for feedback at this time. Some communities have centered theirs around the safe systems approach. I think that's really tricky because often you'll find a lot of action items in some categories and not in the other. So this was kind of what fit. It made sense, but again, open for feedback. So we'll start with the engineering action items. How we've organized this is like, here's the draft action item, here's why we need it. So that's kind of like the foundation of, did it come from a crash pattern? Did it come from a community request? Did it come from another need that we've identified through this process? So we've really tried to tie the action items with like a tangible need for Arlington's safety program. And I'll just run through these kind of quickly, and I want to leave space for us to talk. So for engineering, we are prioritizing proactive, safe systemic safety. So trying to be more proactive, use data to identify locations, try to get ahead of crash patterns. We also want to manage arterial and neighborhood speeds through kind of more systemic implementation as well, where we're proactive. We're addressing speeds through different tools we have. And the reason they're separated is because arterial streets and neighborhood streets have very different applicable tools within our toolbox. So that's why they're separated in this action list to start. We also are going to be tracking crashes more dynamically. That's something that's evolved over time. We're kind of already doing it, but we want to make it a little more formal of a process to show that we are ahead of the trends, trying to make sure that a pattern doesn't emerge and then we catch it later. We're also going to be continuing to use data to drive enforcement, trying to make sure that we are using those in-person resources in places where we have a really high safety need, and then also advancing safety analytics with AI. We're kind of looking into doing near miss analytics and being able to do analysis a little more smarter. And then some initial notes that we got. This doesn't include the feedback that the different committees and commissions have recently submitted, but we will be including that soon. Just what we kind of heard initially. People wanted to see implementation happening quicker, more data on the enforcement piece, so kind of seeing what's actually happening in practice, and more detail on some of the speed strategies. Under the engagement section, we want to establish an ambassadors program. We've seen it work really well in places like Philadelphia, where you have community members who volunteer, and then they kind of spread your reach within the community. So it would kind of be like an add-on to the external stakeholder group. We also want to bolster our VDOT partnership. As you all know, so many of our severe and fatal crashes happen on those really small share of VDOT roads. So we want to really advance our partnership with them. We're proposing to switch to year-round outreach, because right now, the way we've structured it, we usually do a big outreach in April. It's a big staff lift, and it kind of consolidates everything into this 1 month. And the vision is to kind of draw it out throughout the year and create more opportunities for people to engage with the program. And then kind of tied to that, we also want to focus engagement on the Hindry network. So in the past, we've done a clickable map. The whole county's been available, but moving forward, it would actually be, we would focus on the Hindry network corridors to be audited that year. So then we take that feedback and apply it directly to the audits as we assess the corridor. We also want to expand staff training, make sure that we go beyond the new hire training that we have established now, and create more opportunities for staff to learn about new safety practices. We also want to build traffic gardens. We developed guidelines within the last 5 years on how to do that. Now we want to do it. And those are safe spaces for children, youth to practice the rules of the road on their bikes and on their scooters. And last, in the engagement category, we want to streamline progress reporting, because right now we do 3 big reports per year. This would bring it to an annual crash report mid-year and an annual progress report at the beginning of the year. So just 2 big reports that kind of cover both the crash and the progress side. And some other notes that we got in this category initially were, support for streamlined reporting, support for VDOT action. Those were priorities for folks. For behavior change, we focused in, and this is kind of going to stem into the engineering and engagement and the policies, but we wanted to call it out specifically because these were big issues for people. And that was supporting, older adult drivers, because we did see that, 15% of crashes involved an older adult, and often that older adult was driving. The anti-drunk driving campaigns, 1 out of 5 fatal or severe crashes in the last 5 years, alcohol was a factor. So that's a really big one to address through various channels. We want to educate young travelers, because 11% of crashes involve a young adult. When a young person was involved in a critical crash, they were also typically driving. We also have seen lots happening with micromobility, e-bikes, students using those. So we want to kind of get ahead of that as well. We want to expand anti-speeding efforts because, just like alcohol, 1 in 5 fatal or severe crashes involve speeding, and then address distracted driving. Again, 1 out of 5. So these are really big pieces for us. Initial notes said people wanted to see parking and lane blocking addressed in the behavior change, as well as drug impaired driving. And then plans and policies. We want to relaunch Safe Routes to School as a more official program, and do walk to school audits with APS to help support students and families getting to school. We want to advance construction standards by creating a supplement to the Virginia Work Area Protection Manual to be applied to all MOTs, because right now we use what was designed for the state, which is a very suburban guideline. We want to make it a little bit more urban, more focused on bikes and peds. We want to train staff conducting safety reviews to know what to look for and be more standardized in that process. We want to, of course, secure funding, especially in these as budget times get hard. We want to turn around requests for service in 90 days. So kind of putting a lower cap to make sure we're getting to community members more quickly. We want to improve scooter tracking because right now there's not a dedicated way to track that. So we're doing it manually on the back end. We want to be able to work with the state to improve the data set, so we will have a better idea of what's happening as the scooter mode is here, and we want to know what's happening in terms of any crash patterns. We're going to also continue to advocate for safety legislation, and we want to create guidelines to purchase safer vehicles for the county fleet. And overall notes we got were, lots of support for these policy items and an item to address e-vehicle registration in the future. So with that, as I mentioned, we got feedback on Friday. I think I haven't gotten feedback from BAC yet. PAC, thank you for sending it. But we're going to start incorporating that this week, and then we'll be doing staff working sessions and getting ready for public engagement in April, where we'll do an external stakeholder group meeting, at least 6 pop-up events with notice. So we'll call them mini open houses, and then a feedback forum as well. And we'll be at TC on April 30th. So with that, I will open up for any questions, any feedback, anything at all. Eric.
So I actually want to ask here, let me put my camera on so I can address appropriately. I wanted to ask, just because this just happened and it's sort of fresh in my mind, and that is there any way for Vision Zero to tie in with snow clearing practices? And I say this because I think for about a month, a lot of the facilities that Vision Zero and the county has worked on, like curb ramps and other things like that, were all blocked, forcing people to walk in the streets. I'm just wondering, even from the standpoint of looking at data, were there more injuries because people had to walk in the streets versus, walking on sidewalks and other things like that? Just wondering if that's something to kind of add to your sort of quiver of various things, because this has been sort of the second year in a row where we've had long freezes after a snow event that caused a lot of people to have to walk in the streets, which is really, not the safest option.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we all saw it out there when the snow was just stuck in place for like a month, and the ramps were all blocked. So we have that on our radar. I saw it was in the PAC's comments as well, so thank you for including it in those. And I think we can absolutely talk about ways that we can help improve that. I think it's so tricky because you never know if we're going to get snow or not. But it would be great to invest in something like or in more tools that would allow us to clear those faster. I think it was just a very big scramble to get snow moved in the short time that we had before it all froze over this time. But yes, it was a great way to see the lessons learned, and we will figure out ways to make it better because we recognize it was very challenging this past month.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Looks like Cynthia's next.
Thank you. So a comment and then a question. With regard to the snow, I kept hoping that Arlington would, what do you call it, like turn off the beg button requirement, because you couldn't beg, you couldn't get to the buttons for weeks. Even like as a pedestrian, which most of us were at the worst during those worst weeks, you couldn't like literally climb the mountains to get there, and crossing like Langston Boulevard and all these big ones, you kind of like to like push the button and cross properly, but you always had to do it illegally. So I feel like that's a really cheap, easy thing that the county could do in snowstorms is like, it just turn on the walk signals. So yeah. And then you mentioned that there are many crashes on the VDOT roads, and I'm just wondering what are the like proportions of crashes on like arterials or VDOT roads versus on other streets, if we have that data, which we probably do. And also you mentioned in this meeting and in the prior one that the tools for arterial roads are quite limited. And I'd love to hear more about that, and if there's some way that we can push back or advocate for sort of more tools for the arterial roads, because that lines up with a lot of like our own reactions and fears and whatever, that arterials are just scary. So I'd love to sort of brainstorm a little about that.
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to pull it up real quick because it changes pretty quickly. The VDOT crash proportions can be I believe it's about 40%, at least the last time we ran the numbers, which was for like the last 5 years prior to 2025. 72% of roadway miles are Arlington owned in Arlington, 21% are VDOT, but we get about 50% or 40% of the critical crashes are on VDOT. So it's higher. And it depends on what year you look at, because sometimes it's really high, higher than that. So that's why VDOT is such a priority. And then in terms of the arterial streets, we can look at the toolbox, but there's things like speed feedback signs, roadway reconfigurations and narrowing. But that's why we're piloting all of these new speed markings. And the pavement markings have not been rolling out as quickly as we wanted them to because we ran into contractor issues, because they're a kind of a new thing. People don't do these type of markings everywhere. So we're working through that. We'll get more out this spring as we're able to mark with the weather. But that's kind of one of the next things we're checking out is like, how does, these cues on the road and different signage work? But we also want to explore, more things like, and we have speed cameras on arterial streets, which is really helpful in school zones. So just trying to build up that toolbox more and more. And we are willing to, innovate. And if you ever see examples in other places, you can always send them to us because we're happy to test stuff out and
So are
understand
you
what the impacts
allowed
look like.
are you allowed to use like different textures and vertical, like speed humps and so on arterial roads?
We're not allowed to use speed humps on arterial roads, and that's for fire code. Fire sees that as a major impediment to their time to get to their call. Response time. That's what I was trying to say. And there's lots of complexities that I don't think we have time to get into all of that, but that's kind of one of the main reasons, as well as, you know, the high volumes on the street. So we typically don't do speed humps on arterials. And we've tested out some other vertical, you know, kind of narrowing. That's part of the pilot. So we're kind of exploring what could work and what's worked in other places too. Great questions. We'll go to Elliot. Or no, I'm sorry, Dave, you're number one.
No worries.
Sorry about
that. First of all, congratulations on all the great progress, both on the program and on the action plan. I found your comments explaining the relationship between the action plan and the program structure very helpful. You know, we're not replacing the structure of the program with the action list. We're enhancing that. And you could see how some of the actions would over time perhaps become, you know, embedded in the structure and grow the program. So that's really exciting and very helpful to understand that better. My question had to do with item number 20 on the last list, which was related to the construction zone impacts or strategies to make bikes and peds safer in that environment. And I was walking today on Clarendon Boulevard and did a quick unofficial survey of a construction zone. And I saw 2 out of 3 pedestrians ignore the sidewalk closed sign and walk in a very dangerous situation next to buses and other traffic in a construction zone. And this is not the first time, of course, I've seen that, but it's really, really important as we continue to develop these urban corridors. So, and by the way, the third person was me, and I crossed on purpose so I could watch who was going to go straight. So it was, you know, even a short construction zone, but very dangerous. So the question is, can you tell us a little bit more about what that might look like? What could we potentially see in that in the future?
That's a great question. So yes, and you can see why we need it, you know, when we look at this, which this is a very small sample. So like the N is very small in our severe and fatal crashes that involve work zones. I think it's like 10 or something over the last 5 years, but 50% of them were bike or ped. So we realized that like the you know, pedestrians, bikes, people on scooters, you know, people trying to get around not in a car are most impacted by the construction zone. So we want to make sure that things are accessible and not like and more convenient. So because, you know, people are going to do the convenient thing, right? So to try to get the standards to be more you know, specific to, you know, what types of facilities need to be made for pedestrians and bikes in those work zones, and then create some kind of, you know, teeth as well, so that the people who are applying these, you know, the developers, the contractors, they can create these work zones that are easier, or they design the work zone so that it's easier to circumvent for anyone who's traveling. And so my design team was the one that helped to kind of inform this action item. And I know they're always going back to this protection manual. So I think it would kind of just create a set of guidelines that kind of levels up what currently exists for those standards, and making sure that, you know, the paths are more accessible and there's better connections for people who are walking and biking.
And the potentially to on a temporary basis narrow the traffic lane so you could keep the walk lane even in the street with protection. And we saw some of that in the George Mason project. That was, you know, they're much wider road in that case. But I really appreciate the answer. Thank you so much for the information, and good luck.
Thank you so much. That's a good one. I'll take note, and maybe we can flesh out kind of what it looks like a little bit more before it goes out to the public. All right, now we'll go to Elliot.
Hi, thanks so much for coming in and speaking with us. Really appreciate the engagement opportunity for feedback. Also wanted to say, like, I love the quick builds. Like, they are so impactful. Like, I've seen a bunch of them come up in areas that I walk and I bike, and it really makes a difference on cars. Like, I wish we could just do that all over the place. They're pretty good.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to ask about towards the end was, I think you said something about e-bike registration, and kind of curious to, like, I don't know, because in my opinion, like, I don't see e-bikes killing people. So I was kind of curious how that was like weaving into this.
I think what police have run into is there are some behaviors that are risky when we look at e-bikes. And that could be like kind of like weaving in and out of traffic. Of course, I can't think of things off the top of my head, but and you know, you may have seen some of these gangs of, you know, of like you know, younger kids, like, you know, driving kind of like recklessly on their bikes. And so it's just like a new mode where we have lots of different behaviors and police don't have a way of really handling it. So they were kind of comparing it to when mopeds came on the scene, and they weren't really able to get their hand, or they weren't really able to enforce anything for mopeds. And then once the registration came into play, it became much easier for them to like kind of enforce the rules of the road for those road users. So it's more kind of targeted towards some of the really bad behaviors that we see, and a way to make sure that there's something that enforcement can do. It wouldn't, you know, it's not intended to be a barrier, and I think it's very different than a moped, right? So it would kind of have to be fleshed out, but that was just initial feedback we got, and it's a really tricky subject.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would just hope that if that type of stuff is incorporated, like, it's very nuanced to be towards high speed ones, because like the New
Yes,
Jersey law, for
absolutely.
example, is like a mess that says, like, if you're off a bike that goes to 15 miles per hour, you need to wear a motorcycle helmet and register it and get insurance and things like that. So anyway, just wanted to put out there is a lot of nuance, and if, you know, that does become something that I hope that y'all would like engage with us a little bit on.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great point, because we don't want to put any barriers to people using e-bikes, because it's definitely gotten people in the mode share, like my family, because now we can take our kids on the e-bike, like, you know, more multimodal. Cool, thank you. I'll add that note in. Dana.
Yeah, a couple things. When you get ready are you going to be working on the after action review for snow removal? And if you are, please involve us. Because if you guys scope it and you skip over the things, we'll never get them back in. So I was just looking at your crash data on your, and VDOT is about 130% of Arlington for top critical crashes. So are you normalizing that for traffic volume, or are you just counting the numbers? You know, the VDOT roads versus the Arlington roads.
When I quoted the 40%, that was percentage of critical crashes that were on a VDOT road.
Okay, I think it might be higher, but yeah, but you probably need to normalize that for traffic volume. Because
Yes.
395 carries a lot more traffic.
Well, we don't count interstates when we're calculating this for Vision Zero reporting, because we have no jurisdiction over the interstates. So and maybe that's why we're getting different numbers. But I was referencing the systemic crash analysis report that we published. I'll put a link in the chat so you guys have it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at your dashboard, and 395 is just littered with crashes. And if you're not counting them, you know, we probably need to purge those from the list.
There's a toggle there where you can turn it not on interstate.
Okay,
I think we weren't able to like, without wiping them completely from the data set, we couldn't take them off the dashboard. So that's why there is a filter there.
Okay.
Yeah, but we didn't want to totally wipe them out because we do look at those sometimes. So,
And last one to the comment about detours and MOTs. How about coming up with a mechanism to do a post installation review and revision? Right now, we say we put an MOT in, they put an MOT in, and it either works or it doesn't work, and it's what we got. If there was a way to engage the public after an MOT goes in, we might be able to unring the bell.
yeah, that's a great question. I know there's, after discussions about MOTs internally, but I can look into seeing how we can expand that discussion.
Thank you. Please involve us.
Absolutely. I've got that written down, and for the snow removal, which I have not heard. I know it's still snowing, so we have to get through this, and then we're continuing to work through. I know there's just been so much happening. You may have noticed some of our tactical speed humps got wiped out. So we're in the process of replacing them if you see them, and some will be replaced in asphalt. So that's kind of exciting to make some of them permanent too. Great. Thank you, Dana. Let's go to Randy.
I just wanted to say that your program is the most impressive safety program I've ever seen in Arlington. And it is my hope for the future to ride my bicycle on a safer street network. So thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you so much. All
I'm
right,
just going to
Jillian.
jump in here for 1 second. Is the chat turned off on purpose? I know that you had said you were going to put something in the chat, and you've probably noticed, like we have, that it's not an option. Elwin, do you know?
Yeah, that's correct. We've been told by the county manager's office to turn off meeting chats from now on. It's more of in terms of like folks who are watching the recording in the future on YouTube or whatnot. They want everything to be like spoken out loud.
Does it have to do with the
know.
508 compliance?
I'm not sure. I'm just someone just told me to do that.
I know.
This committee is not subject to fire.
Yeah, I know
This committee is
we.
not subject to FOIA.
All right, Jillian, I think your hand was up next.
Okay, a couple things. You mentioned the tactical speed humps. It's great to hear that some of them are being replaced. It's really, really dangerous right now. And it's been a few weeks of this dangerous situation because when you're on a bike, there's like these cliffs and you can't see them at all. So if you can't, hopefully you can speed up fixing them, but if you can't speed up fixing them, at least like taking spray paint out there and putting a warning that someone's going to crash, and it's right beside schools. And we can't wait. Like, hopefully you guys can prioritize this within the next couple of days, because as it gets warmer, we're going to see more people biking, and like I said, really dangerous to
Yes.
go over those where they're broken.
Yes, I think we got folks going out this week.
Okay, good. Then on construction, are we considering speed cameras in construction zones? Those are authorized by Virginia law, but for some reason Arlington didn't adopt them.
We were focusing the program on school zones because that was where the county board wanted to start. And we have not done work zones because they have to be set up very similarly to a school zone. So it's going to need flashers, and they would operate at the active work hours. So it's tricky to get a condition, or I guess we would need like a long-term construction site to make it worth the effort of getting all of the equipment set up, because the flashers are, a whole thing that has to be added into the infrastructure bit. So there has not been movement that I've seen from the county side on moving forward work zones because of some of these barriers.
Okay,
but it's something that I think we can talk about.
Trying to address safety and
Yes.
at least getting the authorization in. I mean, I don't understand why you wouldn't just authorize it, and then because we do have a number of long-term construction sites coming up.
Yes.
Then, so with e-bikes, I am disappointed to hear that there has been sort of acquiescence to this whole like e-bikes are dangerous. Gangs of kids using e-bikes. You even said that they're acting dangerously. I think if you actually look at the data, they're not causing crashes. They're not injuring people.
There have been, and there was
know,
kind of an uptick in e-bike crashes this year with students. So we have seen it a
in
little bit in the
Arlington.
data. Yeah.
And it is, but you know, part of this is the denominator. There's a whole lot more e-bikes out there. Is it really a per mile driven or per mile ridden uptick?
That
or
I don't
just
know. And like I said,
e-bikes?
it's not a draft action item yet. So this feedback is very helpful. We're not trying
Okay.
to, you know, generalize about a road about a road user or anything. And I did use air quotes. This is kind of community feedback we're getting to.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. And thank you for voicing that, because it does help us to kind of formulate like what the priority is. But I will say there were a few bike crashes. And like you said, the denominator is small, or like we don't have that many reported crashes. And so when I see a couple, it's like, oh, that's kind of concerning. I'm starting to see this trend. So maybe not significant by statistic standards, but it was something we noticed this year, because we did see more youth ridership on the e-bikes when the age restrictions, I think, you know, they're kind of underage riders. If you look at the,
Yeah. And I mean,
if
some
it's
of
a
these are
shared
not
mobility device.
class 1, 2, 3. Like some of them don't even meet the guidelines and whatnot, but also they're not cars. So it's not a simple solution. And I find in talking to people, a lot of times it's just the newness of it people are reacting to. They've never seen it before and they have a negative reaction. And unfortunately, a lot of people just do have a negative reaction to seeing teens out there. And when you sort of say, well, is it because you've never seen that before, or because they actually look like they were going to hurt someone? A lot of times people are like, well, I guess I just haven't seen it before and I don't know whether they're going to hurt someone. And the police are not immune
hurt someone,
to
but maybe
that
themselves
sort of
kind of in some of those situations too. But
yeah, but
I
that's a
understand what
different
you're
reaction,
saying.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's a different solution to than something that discourages something that is shown. Like we do have numbers. We have numbers that show that bike registration hurts safety. We have numbers that say that e-bikes help safety. So jumping to e-bike registration would be really disappointing and really against the things that we do have. And then the other thing that struck me from the presentation, especially when we're talking about using AI and whatnot, a lot of that is based on current trends and the way people, you know, currently are moving. What I hear time again is that, especially from parents, they want their kids to be more independent and have more independent mobility, but they don't feel safe. There are barriers, you know, the lack of safety for kids getting around on their own is a huge barrier. But because then what you know, and so what happens is parents are driving them around places or carpooling and figuring out a way for the kids to get around them in cars. What that means is that's not going to show up in your data. That's, you know, in your experiential data. It might show up in surveys, but it won't show up in data. And so when I see a system that's going to focus efforts on using AI with real life experiential data, that's what I think you're going to miss. You're going to miss what's keeping people from doing what they want to be doing or having their kids do what they want to have their kids do. And
well, I think that's helpful. So the way we're going to use AI to start is intersection analysis. So we'll take like these top 10 hotspots of locations where we've had really hard times identifying like a specific pattern, or we kind of know what the pattern is, but we need to see it, or we, you know, have to get some evidence to bring to VDOT to, you know, encourage a change on the road. We can select the intersections and then collect a week's worth of video. And then the companies will tell you exactly where the crash patterns are happening. So it's like a very pointed, like we're investigating this, and rather than have somebody sit out there for a day, get a full week's worth of data that shows you like there were X many conflicts at this part of the intersection in here, and here's the red light running issue. And so like it just kind of gives us this full picture of what's happening without having to invest a ton of staff time to physically be out there. We go out, we look at sites, absolutely. Like, I'm not saying we're not going to do that. It's just getting that really fine-tuned information. So like, I hear what you're saying, you might not be seeing the students, but it's really going to be helpful for us on some of these intersections where, we might not know what the issue is, like, or maybe we know what it is and we need to confirm it. And it gives you that really nice quantitative data to support it. And then also if you kind of go to VDOT and you show them like, hey, look at this, you can see the condition, it makes it a much easier yes to say, okay, like I get why we need to make this improvement. Sorry, go ahead.
And I'm not saying don't use AI at all, but what you just said, I think puts a perfect, like hits the nail on the head. You just said a full picture, and you're not getting the full picture because what you're not getting is the people who are in cars but don't want to be. Like, for example, after the snow, the Quincy bike lane was blocked. And so my daughter could not bike to her bus stop. So we had to drive her. And so if you take that data as to what was happening in the intersections along that route, it would have been skewed data because we didn't want to be in a car. But we had to be in a car because of Arlington, because of the black bike lanes. So it is a picture and it is a tool and it can be helpful. But when you rely on it and you say, and therefore we have a full picture, that's the problem. That's exactly the problem. You're not thinking through like, oh, but what are we missing by looking at it that way? So just, I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying, remember, you don't have the full picture from it.
Absolutely. And I think we look at that, whenever there's a crossing, or there's not a crossing somewhere and you're like, well, no one's crossing here. It's like, well, of course no one's crossing here. It's because there's no crosswalk. So if you try to just measure the people jaywalking, you're not going to get that full picture. So I totally understand what you're saying. And thank you for putting it in that perspective. We'll definitely keep that under consideration.
It may be that there's no safe route half mile back. You see no bikes here.
Yeah.
Because a half mile back, there's some barrier, then that means people can't bike or, some bigger issue. So just keep that in mind. And it would be helpful to keep putting those asterisks on to the use of data and whatnot to say that we're going to keep looking at that and keep considering what's not in the data.
Absolutely.
So anyway, otherwise, thank you. And I totally co-sign all the comments about how like, this is the best program in the county. It's amazing. It's a model, it's great. And even just for things like on the budget side for performance measures, you guys have the best performance measures, in my opinion, of any part of the Arlington County government, and are doing a great job at being transparent. So all that stuff is great. This is just sort of making better the parts we can. So thank you.
Thank you. Great notes.
We're way over time, but I'm just going to squeeze in one extra tiny comment that I was going to put in the chat, and of course we can't use the chat, but just as you think about possible e-bike registrations or such like, let's just make sure to keep Arlington a welcoming community for all people. And so many people are rightly really scared to put their names down on anything these days, and certainly to register. And a lot of people who use bikes and e-bikes are delivery people, are people commuting. They'd rather have cars, but they don't, a lot of these guys. And I just want to make sure that we stay welcoming. So just to keep those issues in mind. Thank you so very much. This has been really interesting. I've written so many notes, like, wow, very cool.
Well, thank you guys. We'll take your feedback to heart. I totally hear you on the, keeping things welcoming, keeping, the mode accessible to people. So I will absolutely bring that feedback back. And again, get written comments in. I don't think I've gotten them from BAC. So by end of this week at the latest would be great. And thank you guys. I really appreciate everything you do. And hopefully I'll be back soon.
Christine, thank you so much, and thank you for thank you for like staying on for an extra 20 minutes, and we should have slotted you for an hour.
Sorry.
We've got another 6 topics. No, it's a good discussion. I think before we move to the next topic, just want to make sure if anyone's not on mute, if you're on the Teams website app or on the phone, can you please mute? Just want to prevent any more echoes. And so the next topic is Mike and Pam with Arlington Transportation Future.
And Mike, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We hear you.
Okay.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Pam, can you hear me? Okay. So I am had computer problems, so I haven't had a chance to go through everything. I sent an email out, and Pam and the PAC is way ahead. I was going to say as usual. Maybe that's not fair, but it does feel like it. I sent out some thanks to Randy's giving me some ideas, and then Jillian gave me a bunch of feedback. I'm going to take those and sort of massage through them and try to get us down to 2 per, which is what is allowed. I think they're due next Monday. I think we have 1 more week here to get those in. So I'm not, and Pam and I agreed we didn't have time to kind of walk through really any of them on the meeting. But this is just another plug. This is our one chance. We've been complaining for what's it been, 1.5 years that there's not enough specificity in the plan. It's all kind of vague. And now I think they're asking for, okay, specifically what do we need to do to implement these policies. And so if you haven't had a chance, please jump in and give me some more ideas. If not, I'm going to try to be pulling them together with the goal of having a BAC input by Monday. If I really get my act together, I'll try to get a draft out to everybody Thursday or Friday, so you can have a look at it and let me know if there's anything in there that the BAC doesn't support. With that, I'll turn it over to Pam.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
And I am having horrible computer problems as well. My problem is with Microsoft. It at the moment won't let me do normal stuff on Teams. Anyway, I am Pam Van Hine. I am the recording secretary for the PAC, and I'm also the PAC representative on the advisory committee for the MTP update. And I'm going to be talking about our homework assignments to do strategies. I had fabulous collaboration with 6 PAC members, and Ambar and David Early just really went to town on stuff and like filled in all the blanks, and then Ambar did a great job of editing them, and they have gone out and they've actually been approved by 7 members of the PAC. So we have a majority approval, and I'm probably going to send them out in the next day or so because I have a million things I have to get done this week. Anyway, so we took this as an opportunity to fix problems. The first problem is what is wrong with the current pedestrian element, and the main problem is, which drives us nuts, is it has a 6-foot clear zone minimum for commercial areas, and it needs to be at least 8 to 10 feet, and we also need to expand the neighborhood sidewalks width to 5 to 6 feet minimum. So that was covered in our policy 18, strategy 2. The next thing that we needed to solve is what a lot of the pedestrian element is great. It's got wonderful stuff, but there is a goal in it that did not make it into the current MTP update, and that was the goal of completing the sidewalk network. So we added that to policy 23, strategy 1. Another big area is that the current system for making sidewalks is broken, both in commercial areas and in neighborhoods. And this is addressed in policy 23, strategy 2. For commercial sidewalks in the current conditions, there are often non-uniform new sidewalks. There's often poor maintenance by property owners. It is unclear sometimes who is responsible over time, and it's not clear how to report them to get them fixed. And we feel that the county should take over building and maintaining the sidewalks with funding from the developers. In neighborhoods, there are many missing sidewalks, and we do not have a network because there's so many missing sidewalks. I don't have one on my block. And neighbors can often prevent new ones, and that is something that needs to change. So until it is changed, we're not going to be able to complete the sidewalk network. We need to change guidelines and county policies to encourage sidewalk building in the neighborhoods. The next area is the county has decided that pedestrians are number one. We are the priority, which is fabulous. We're thrilled about that. So what are the strategies that need to help make that happen? We need to protect the pedestrian clear zones and make sure that pedestrians are prioritized and have safe access under all conditions. The first point is ensure that the pedestrian clear zone is protected from other encroaching uses. That includes cafe zones, street furnishing, scooters, sometimes even trees. And that is addressed in Policy 17, Strategy 1. And one of our recommendations with that, which is Strategy 2, is to add green ribbons that link parks and to create car-free green routes throughout the mega blocks. And we are testing that idea, which came from Livability 22202 in River House, and suggesting other places in the National Landing area. So we'll see how that works, but we are hopeful that that will be a way of kind of combining green areas and sidewalks. The next area is MOTs, and they have to prioritize safe and convenient access for all pedestrians, and that is in Policy 10, Strategies 1 and 2. Safety first. Intersections are well lit, frequent, and have high visible crosswalks, raised crosswalks, corner daylighting, and bump outs, pedestrian refuge, medians, and wayfinding. And that is covered in several of our strategies under Policies 7, Strategy 2, Policy 18, Strategy 1, and Policy 19, Strategy 2. All pedestrian routes need to be fully accessible to all, including access from the curb to the sidewalk. And this is covered in Policy 7, Strategies 1 and 2, Policy 13, Strategy 2, and Policy 20, Strategy 1. Launch campaigns and programs that promote safe, empathetic behavior for all road users, covering all ages, abilities, and modes, and that is in Policy 16 of Strategies 1 and 2. And finally, prioritize safe pedestrian routes to key destinations, metro transit, schools, hospitals, etc., that are cleared promptly, especially after snow events. That is Policy 1 of Strategy 1. And I'm going to read this, and this is a sample of our strategies, which tend to be a bit long. All right, here it goes. Create a resilient pedestrian network of key sidewalks and crossings to schools, transit, hospitals, and grocery stores, and adopt service standards that prioritize these routes for blockages, drainage fixes, heat treatments, and snow ice removal, e.g. cleared within X hours, problem spots fixed within Y days, with public reporting each winter. So that's what we're doing, and I'm probably going to turn them in the next day or so. Any comments or questions are welcome. Thank you. And I'm sorry my computer's messed up.
Awesome. Let's go to folks who have questions. So Eric and then Jillian.
So actually, Pam, as you were talking, I was just thinking, do we address at all driveway aprons, which are often very non-uniform, which
Yes.
for
Yes.
good,
Yes.
good.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot. We have a lot to say about curb cuts and driveways. Yeah, that's part of the reason they're so long.
Thank you.
But again, the staff did not give us any samples, and they did not give us any length restrictions. They only said that we had to squeeze everything into 2 strategies, which we did except for one category. All right, Jillian?
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing, Pam. A couple thoughts. One is mode separation. I'm not sure if you guys might have it, but I would hope that you guys would support mode separation, including some language about mode separation on trails, because honestly, nobody wants that. Like in areas where it is a through route for people biking, for people on wheels, people biking and using micro mobility. I think we would all be served better if those two things were separated, and that would be great to have in the policy. The Custis Trail in Roslyn, when they widened it, we asked if we could separate people walking and biking, and they said, well, it's not an MTP, so we can't. So it'd be great to get that in there now. And then the when I heard you talking, I had this thought of like, I'm a little worried that, and I don't know how you've written it, but I'm just a little worried that the perfect is the enemy of the good. So for example, neighborhood streets. In my neighborhood, we have lots of sidewalks that are 3.5 feet wide, but have poles and other street furniture in the middle of them. And so I had surgery a couple months ago, and I had a walker for a while, and I couldn't use the walker on those sidewalks. I would hope that whatever is in the MOT, sort of makes it safe, or makes it possible to use the sidewalks quickly. The streets in my neighborhood aren't big enough to have 5 or 6 foot sidewalks, at least not on both sides of the street. And then you end up with this issue of like, oh, what do you do? When personally, I just want them to get the street furniture out so that all the sidewalks are at least 3 foot wide, so that someone with a walker or a stroller or a wheelchair can just use the sidewalk. And I think there's a quick solution, which is if there isn't a clear sidewalk on a neighborhood block, then we should reduce the speed limit until we have a chance to fix the infrastructure for people walking. We shouldn't, in the case where people in wheelchairs and with walkers and with strollers are forced off the sidewalk, they should not be forced to mix with cars who are going faster. And so, and that's very low cost, it's very easy, and could be done very quickly. Just say, if the sidewalk's not there. And then, 5 and 6 feet as an ideal is great, but we wouldn't want them not to build sidewalks if they don't.
New sidewalks, existing sidewalks, unless there's going to be a new development. We have some that we have lots of no sidewalks in our neighborhood, and we have some that are 2.5 feet wide. But a lot of them, very few of them are even 5 feet wide, and it's a real problem. And
right, but
that have a lot of traffic, a lot of pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, but if there's a policy that says they have to be 5 feet wide, then I think they're just not going to be built. Versus a policy that says like they're ideally 5 feet wide, but the minimum is 3 feet. I think that might be
minimum of 3 feet is not going to work. Period. Anywhere. But anyway, those are good comments, and we do have some.
I disagree.
And I'm hoping that the BAC will have some strong comments on trails and what's needed for trails, and the mode separation would be a good place there. I don't think we've specifically mentioned mode separation. We have other issues in there. And a lot of what we talk about is accessibility. And certainly with the recent snow crate, it's like I couldn't go anywhere without my husband carefully making sure I didn't fall down. And I have a rollator. I couldn't use a rollator. People couldn't use wheelchairs. Couldn't do anything, and all of that has to be fixed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I hope all of that is front of mind for all of us because it just happened. But it's the first time it's happened in 5 years or longer. So I hope we don't end up having our comments, our feedback to this very important. I agree with Mike. This is a hugely important step. If a large percentage of our comments are related to snow clearing, I think we will have missed the mark.
Ours are not. Ours are all over the place. Trust me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Pam. Thank you, Mike. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Nope. We are meeting again on what should have been the PAC date, so we'll certainly have information to share in April.
Amazing. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. And
Yeah.
it's a big time investment. And yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, just to reiterate, BAC, watch your inboxes towards the end of the week. I'll try to assemble everything I've gotten, and I think I sent out the PAC's draft as well. So take a look at that and see if there's anything that particularly we should pull over. But I think there's enough here, and they limit us to 2 per, that I think we almost need to cover. We can't have too many repeats because there's a lot to talk about.
Great.
Agreed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can move to our next topic, which is going to be backpack transportation tracker with Cynthia and Dana.
Thank you. So I can start with just a few words, and maybe Dana can jump in here. On the 12th of February, several of us met. It was myself and Dana and Elwin and Wei Wang and Nate and Aaron. We met to talk about this new project liaison role that could become like an activity for the BAC and the PAC, and we just met to ask a lot of questions and find out what DES is thinking in terms of a role for our committees. And so a few key notes that I jotted down were, and I think this may still be a work in progress, but we got the impression that they plan to give us quarterly, like, advance notice of what projects may be coming up. And they said if BAC and PAC submit comments, then they will put some extra weight on the comments from our advisory committees. And they can also extend the deadlines a little bit, at least, for engagement, for the engagement opportunities. We asked a lot of questions like, does this mean that we'll have access to more information, or is it just that we can sort of send official versions of our responses on the public engagement opportunities that all Arlingtonians get in their inboxes? And it seems to be the latter, that we will not get extra information. We will not have anyone in DES or on Arlington County staff to speak with about these projects, but rather that we would prepare comments. This is how they're envisioning it, and send our comments to Elwin, and Elwin would pass them along. Yeah, so that was most of what was covered. It was not, I mean, we were hoping that the role of project liaison would be a little bit more involved, that we'd have more access to information at different points in the program design, not simply that we could do more for the engagement opportunities that hit everybody's mailboxes. Dana, do you want to jump in here if you're here? Are you here? Yes, you are.
Yeah, indeed he is. Yeah, no, I was, I had thought that it was going to be, an actual, project level engagement, but but it turned out not to be. The reality is, uh, having done review documents in the federal government, if you get something after the deadline, unless there's a hard deadline, like it's going to contracting the next morning, everybody tries to incorporate the late input. In all, input is better, more is better. So I was a little, it was a bit underwhelming, I suppose, in some respects. The fact that it still doesn't talk about substantive engagement. We're still looking at the same stuff that the public is looking at.
Yeah, and we were hoping that sort of certain staff would be assigned to communicate with our project liaisons, but that is not the case. And even the submission is simply sending our input um, to Ellen. We love you, Ellen, but we were expecting something a little different. So it was interesting. Pam, yes.
Oh, hi. We got a message from Nate Graham, and I think it went to the back as well, about the CC to DCA engagement. And the deadline for the general public is like March 29th, but we're given until May 1st. So we have lots of time to discuss it and get it approved, do a nice letter. I'm a little bit surprised that, unlike how we normally send letters, it wouldn't go to the county manager. Maybe we can copy it to county manager.
I would say it should still go to the county manager.
Yeah, yeah. But according to Nate's message and what you had at your meeting, it's supposed to go through our staff person. Which is,
Elwin, can you try to resolve that?
And we can do both.
See, yeah, I don't want to speak for Nate. I'm not sure if that was a typo or if that was intended. So I'm gonna go ahead with what he said in terms of getting it to by May 1st to the staff liaisons, which is me and David.
Okay, Nate, Ellen, can you confirm that the county manager wants us to communicate directly with you guys now?
Yeah, I can get that to you.
Thank you.
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that would be a good one to resolve.
If we have an extra minute, do either of you, Pam or Dana, want to talk a little bit about CC to DCA and what you've observed so far? Because that was actually the next thing to raise on my list, but you got there first, Pam.
I will say like 1 minute's worth.
Yeah.
That in general, people who care in our community, including the bid, are not happy because the design is enclosed at the VRE end and the airport end, but when you go a long distance over MPS line, it is open, which the first problem for us is that as pedestrians and cyclists, we want the entire place to have coverage, or it's not going to be useful in bad weather. There's many aesthetic issues as well, and I don't know what the solution is, but we need to respond strongly about it. There are issues with the connection, the first connection from Crystal Drive up to the VRE station, and those aren't even really covered in the presentation, but there's major problems with that too. There's stairs, there's a runnel, there's one elevator, at the moment, there's no escalator, which would be most unfortunate because you're basically going up at least a floor or more. And temporarily, it's going to be Amtrak eventually will have its own kind of connecting station, we hope, and they hope, but it's on hold at the moment, so Amtrak will start by using the VRE station, which is going to be expanded, et cetera, on the south end. But there's no room where the entrance is to VRE to put in an escalator. And there needs to be a second elevator or two. And what happens when the first one goes out? I mean, you're talking about people going to the airport. They've got luggage. There's people with disabilities. There's people in wheelchairs. People with kids. People with packages. All kinds of things. We need escalators. We really need a second elevator. So those are two of the big issues. And we need the entire thing covered, or it's not going to be useful. There are other points too. People would like some seating, etc. But those are the main issues, I think. And everybody should look at it and be ready to do comments. And Andrea Walker and I are going to be spearheading it for the PAC. This is our area. We have pushed for the CC to DCA for a long time, and we hope it comes through. But some of these things really need to be fixed. That's it.
Thank you. That was super helpful.
Yeah. Let me add one more thing, Cynthia.
Yeah.
The CC to DCA on the Crystal City side is relying very heavily on work that's being done by VRE as part of the southern entrance to the future VRE station. It needs to be integrated. We need, Arlington, even if Arlington acknowledges the fact that there's work done by others, it needs to be integrated into the plan from the curb on Crystal Drive to the terminal at the airport, as opposed to saying, work by others. Because right now, the CC to DCA doesn't get you any place but off the landing, but off the VRE station landing. It needs to be a holistic design. Thanks.
Great, thank you for that. So I know we're about 20 minutes over, but I think the next topic is Mary and Lauren, Bike Arlington, Walk Arlington.
Hello. So I'm Mary Delau with Bike and Walk Arlington. So I'll be speaking tonight for both of us. So just some things that we have coming up in the next few months. We have Winter Bike to Work Day coming up on Friday, March 13th. And so that's something that was organized by the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. And we were supposed to participate in February, but it was snowing. So it was postponed. Like they were worried about trail conditions on the Mount Vernon Trail. So it was bumped to Friday, March 13th. And we will be out at Gravelly Point from 4 to 6 p.m. with WABA, VPRA, and the National Landing Bid. So if you're out riding and want to come say hi, we will be there. And I think there will be hot chocolate and granola bars. So that will be fun. And then also registration is opening for spring adult bicycle education classes. So we have 6 classes this spring in partnership with WABA, Adult Learn to Ride Basic Skills Clinic, Road Riding Basics, and those are at Oak Ridge Elementary and at the Washington Liberty High School parking deck. And this spring, we're also doing 3 group rides, also in partnership with WABA. So there'll be a ride in National Landing during Bike Month in May. It will be the Arlington Loop. Then also probably a ride in Ballston, we think, and a trail ride for recent Learn to Ride graduates. So that's all coming up. And then another thing we have coming up that's different and that I'm really excited about is that on March 26th, we're hosting a film screening at Central Library featuring Lynn Salvo. So if anybody is a member of Babes on Bikes, you may know her. So she's an amazing bicyclist, and she holds the Guinness World Record for having been the oldest woman to ride across Europe. She rode across Europe 4,330 miles in 95 days and set the record. She has 6 Guinness World Records, and she set them all after she turned 65. And so the movie that we're showing at the library is about her experience on the ride across Europe. So that will be on March 26th at Central Library in the evening. And I can put something about that in the Google group if anyone wants to attend. And Lynn will be there and she'll answer questions. And I think it's a wonderful movie. And I think it's a way to draw new people into our orbit and learn about our programs and bike classes and everything we offer. So that's coming up. And then last but not least, Bike to Work Day is on Friday, May 15th, and registration for that opened today. So definitely please sign up if you're interested. And this year, Bike Arlington is managing 3 pit stops. So the Ballston pit stop this year has moved to Welborn Square since the Trek closed, where we used to host the pit stop. And then we'll have the second pit stop on Columbia Pike at Penrose Square. So it's gone back to Penrose Square since construction there is finished. And then Roslyn. And then the other pit stops, Met Park, the Amazon pit stop, that will be from 4 to 6 p.m. National Landing Bid will be at the Water Park. The Lion Village Shopping Center, that's the Langston Boulevard Alliance, managing that pit stop. That's another afternoon one from 3 to 6. And then the HQ National Guard TARC pit stop, that's another one that is a morning pit stop. So that's all coming up. And then on the walk side, I don't have anything like firmed to report tonight, but we are working on a spring walk, and I don't have dates or details yet. And also working on updating the walkabouts brochure. So that's everything on our end.
Awesome. One question, I don't think you mentioned it. I know every couple of years you do the sort of bike comfort map. Is that something that you're going to kick off later this year?
That is due to be updated, and yes, that would be like next fall. So the last time we updated it was in 2024, and we just reprinted it. So now that will be coming up. Be starting on that maybe like over the summer to get engaged to print that, hopefully in the fall. Yes, Eric.
Just wondering, with regard to walking, I know in the past you've done sort of a combined walking with Vision Zero. Is that something, do you have anything like that coming up in the future?
So yes, that's exactly what we're working on, but we don't have it finalized yet. But you're absolutely right, because you've always helped with those. So that's usually April timeframe, something like that. So that's what we're hoping on. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or? All right. So I think that's all from us.
Thanks. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So the next topic we've got is around the county manager's proposed budget. So Cynthia, I think me and you are going to be leading a discussion here. I don't know if either you or someone else has more information about the budget that is to be shared.
Yeah, I do not, because I have just been slammed with work. So, let's open this up to anyone who has already studied the budget. Dana or Jillian or anyone else, please weigh in.
I know David done some work on this. I don't know if Dave, you wanted to share any thoughts.
Well, sure. Hopefully everybody on the phone has seen the kind of basic, mostly pedestrian oriented cherry picking that I did out of the 1,200-page document. The key, there are both reductions that are programmatic to help balance the budget that may have an impact on some of the programs, but there's also a comparison year over year about how we're able to maintain some of our transportation maintenance projects and capital investment as well. I'd be happy to go over that if we've got time. We could it's in the white paper, if you will. So happy to just hold off on that. The key thing is we've got a series of work sessions coming up with the board. They'll be talking about DES on the 10th from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. So that's a key department to think about. Then the police, I think it's the 19th. And let's see, Parks is the 5th, so it's later this week, just as 3 examples. So those are key opportunities to hear the board's discussion with the directors. And it would be important if we had specific questions that we wanted to have addressed at that meeting to get them in the hands of both the board and the department leads so they could address them. However, the opportunity to speak as part of the commission group is going to be on the 8th of April in 2 different sessions. There's going to be an afternoon session and evening sessions for commissions to come and provide verbal input to the board on the budget, as opposed to being able to comment during these work sessions. So those are just a couple of highlights from the process.
Thanks for sharing that, Dave. Dana.
Yeah, take a look at the police. They're proposing to abandon, in my words, their effort to actually hire parking enforcement aides. They've never, they're about half strength right now, and they're proposing with some kind of aspirational plan to mirror the Alexandria, contract parking enforcement. They're showing increases in productivity, but they haven't awarded the contracts, and I have not been able to actually see that they've even advertised the contracts. So they're proposing to buy technology that makes this better and hire contractors that will make it more aggressive, and they haven't done either of them. So that needs to be accompanied by actually, revising the county code to clean up, to allow them to enforce in some bike lanes. Aside from that, 1,200 pages of deathless prose.
Thanks, Dana. Eric?
Yeah, Dave, thanks for sharing. I just wanted to know, are our committees actually invited to that meeting, or is that just a commission's meeting?
That's a great question. I'll look up on the information right now, see if it clarifies that. Yeah, it says commissions, but yeah, so that's that is something to be get some clarity on.
Yeah, I
I
know
don't
it.
think the committees are invited.
I know in the past we've had some special invites. I know that Jillian has maybe in the past, but I'm just wondering what our status is with that.
The other opportunity is the public hearing, which is in March, the 26th, I believe. That is the 24th, and I'm sorry, it's the 24th. It's a public hearing at 6:30. So that would be obviously another opportunity to present on behalf of the committees.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion or any questions anyone had? Any thoughts on how to be more engaged or anything like that? No? Okay. If not, I think Cynthia, do you think we should move to the next topic?
Pam has a hand up.
Oh, sorry, Pam, I didn't see you there.
Barely. Uh, Dave put together this great set of slides, which he has shared with the PAC members, and I think that can. And at the prior meeting, he also offered to draft up a budget letter for us, which we have done in the past, and we send to the county manager as we send all our letters to. So hopefully Dave can continue working on this, and a couple of us can help him, and we can have a draft ready to discuss at the PAC meeting in April. And I think that's not too late, and that would be terrific, Dave, if you're still willing to chug on this. The information you've already provided is great. We just need to organize it and prioritize what we really want to talk about and emphasize. So how's that?
The board is handling, let's see, the board approves the board wrap-up sessions, which is where they make decisions, is April 13th. So it'll be critical to have any input in writing in their hands several days before that, and as soon as possible, probably, would be wise. The capital part of the budget workshop, I should have added this, is April 9th. So that's also an important part, of course, for both programs.
Where's another tiger?
Okay, great. Thank you for everyone who shared thoughts and for the work that's being done around this. It seems like, really hard topic to get really in depth into because of the sort of density of the information. So appreciate all the work going into this, and please call out any ways that we can help, as has already been done. Okay, so the next topic was going to be a Dominion Energy WNOD Agreement Commonwealth legislation discussion with Kevin. I think I saw Kevin on earlier. Kevin, are you still on? I don't think so. If Kevin joins later, we can circle back to that. I think in lieu of that discussion, we can move to the following item, which is BAC and PAC business and announcements. So I think first there's going to be Pam, and probably over to you for approval of PAC minutes.
Yes, you can still hear me, I hope. I move that we approve the draft of the February 11th PAC minutes, which I did circulate a few days ago. Any second?
Second.
And any discussion about them? And anyone against the proposal? Say no. And people who are approve it, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay, they're approved. Thank you so much.
So we had a quorum still, right?
I hope so. I will look. We did have most people here earlier, and I'll look. Yeah.
We have Mr. Corns on.
Yep, I'll look.
And we have Kevin here now.
Great.
Perfect.
All right, Kevin, thanks for joining. We have you slotted to provide an update on the Dominion Energy WNOD agreement and the legislation work. Are you there?
Yes. Can you? Yes. Sorry. The tech on my phone here is a little spotty. I'm traveling this week, so you'll have to excuse if it's a little choppy. But yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about the WNOD agreement first, and then we can talk a little bit about where we're at on legislation. I, as you probably saw, I was on a little bit earlier, and I was going to try to chime in with a little bit an update earlier in the chat, but then of course somebody commented the chat was disabled, so that's why it didn't work. Anyway, the WNOD, as I think folks are aware, Dominion Power and Nova Park signed an updated MOU a couple weeks ago, bringing an end to a very long and kind of somewhat bitter fight over the last, we'll call it, 14 months. That stems from Dominion walking away from its long time, the agreement it had with Nova Parks in terms of maintenance and when they would alert the park authority when they were doing any kind of work. And yeah, said that move back in late 2024 set in motion just a lot of reluctance to engage on sort of further negotiations that stretched all throughout the spring last year. Folks may have seen some news coverage about it. All the jurisdictions were unanimous in opposing what Dominion was doing, cutting down trees, and without sort of a plan for restoration. They did pause that at one point last year, and of course, but still there was sort of no progress. But we heard back at the very end of last year in December that they were getting close, and we advocates who had been sort of engaged and following along over the previous year, they wanted to share this information with us because Nova Parks, maybe not publicly, but very much credits advocates, community members, elected leaders for really helping to keep the pressure on Dominion. And so the agreement that they end up signing just this past January really is a big deal and a really checks off all the boxes that Nova Parks wanted to see. There's going to be restoration going for the damage that they did last year. So they were going to be restoring that, and then they've also promised to restore any future disruptions that they may have to make as a result of maintenance for their power lines. They have come to an agreement on sort of what that will look like, on the notification requirements, both for Nova Parks, but also the adjoining communities, right? It's not just enough for them to say, hey, we're going to be out here shutting down the trail and cutting down trees, Nova Parks. But I mean, if you're a neighbor, if you're living alongside the trail, it's that's extremely disruptive and to not sort of get noticed. And so it's very exciting to be that we have an agreement in place, that Dominion will be holding themselves to a lot more just rules, regulations, whatever, but yeah, we can hopefully avoid these kinds of drawn out fights in the future. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have about that. I could go into more detail, but I'll pause there before going and talking about the legislative stuff.
Yeah, I had a question about this. So how, I haven't been following it too closely since you last shared it, I think last maybe joint meeting that we had around this. How much would you say that this feels like a sort of legitimate or agreement that will last versus just being something that is being done by Dominion or to just get the pressure off them?
I mean, any agreement is ultimately is sort of strength to derive from are people going to abide by it and can we enforce it? And so I mean, I think the enforcement piece hopefully we don't have to go down that road. But I mean, Dominion or Nova Parks, was feeling very, very good about this. They really feel like they got, were able to extract meaningful concessions and felt really good about the language. So I sort of, if Nova Parks is happy with the outcome, that makes me feel good and confident that I think also the fact that Nova Parks did have a leadership change amidst this. I don't think that Justin Wilson, inheriting this, sort of managing to figure this out, and getting an agreement, within just a couple of months here. I don't think he's going to be particularly eager to let that sort of slip away. So yeah, I think ultimately it's where we needed them to be, and I think Dominion just did the math in a couple of different ways. I think just the optics were bad. Just continued bad press is not great. I also think like the new administration in Richmond plays a role into things like that, right? Like they didn't want to risk state legislators getting involved, and right then things get real messy when you have state senators proposing something new, some whatever. And so I think they just saw the writing on the wall and realized like this was not gonna, they weren't gonna benefit from continuing to draw this out, and they needed to play nice, and that ultimately the cost for them is less to just do what we were asking you to do, which is replant stuff, let us know ahead of time what's going on, try to be responsible neighbors so that we can share this place together.
Thanks.
Any other questions about the WNOD?
Oh, Cynthia, I think you're muted.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
There we go. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so very much. Great information. I have a couple of questions. One, over the past many months, there have been all the rumors, of course, swirling about why Dominion is having these issues now and clear cutting now, and whether it has anything to do with AI and data centers. So that's my question one. Have you gathered more intelligence?
Not really. I mean, other than the fact that I think the data center growth and that the demands on our energy infrastructure are absolutely happening, right? That's not a myth. That's not a rumor. I mean that is happening. It is raising the prices of energy and for Virginians. Do I think this particular move was like directly tied? I mean, I think for them, they were just looking for a way to like cut costs. The having to do sort of thoughtful, intentional maintenance is a lot more expensive than doing brute force. Just hey, we'll just cut this stuff down and to cut it to the nub, and then we can sit on it for the next 10 or 15 years, right? But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think that's going to continue. Something we'll have to continue to monitor. If that's something folks care about. But yeah, the WNOD I think was uniquely. This was sort of a unique fight because, right, like yes, there are these critical power lines that run above it, but it's also like one of the most visited parks in the entire Commonwealth. So. A unique circumstance in that it would those came those were layered right on top of each other.
Thank you, and your response got right to my second question, which is what you said. Thoughtful maintenance takes a lot more money. It's much cheaper to clear cut. So in your presentation, you spoke a couple of times about restoration and replanting, but have they made any agreement to do what you call this thoughtful and careful maintenance? That is, that would be really lovely. But I didn't hear that in your initial presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I think within the MOU, they lay out, I think lots of different things, but like, including one of the things they lay out is, sort of what, establishing that, like, sort of the minimum number of, the minimum impact, right? If you're going to do a thing or you have to do a thing, striving to, have the most minimal impact. And then in terms of, what gets, then there's also just a lot on sort of what gets planted and how it gets planted, because we don't want, we want them to, if they are going to have to cut down trees, okay, what are you putting back there? And when what you're putting back, is it going to be something that can contribute, that can sort of, support native species, all that good stuff. So yeah, I mean, we are always sort of trusting, at the end of the day, you have to trust, somebody to say, hey, yeah, this is an acceptable, impact for this kind of project. And, I think as long as this can be done more in partnership with Nova Parks, like they're not unreasonable. And so, I think trusting their arborists on staff to say, yeah, this is what's going to need to be done if we're going to be, making, these kind of impacts in this place.
And one more real
Well,
quick,
it's a good bit of wait and see. Yeah.
was there any discussion about mode separation and about Dominion putting in a little bit of money toward like maintenance or development of the trail system?
Not as part of this process with Dominion. Though I will say I have heard, some chatter that there is a interest at Nova Parks in revisiting dual trails. I don't think they were, they certainly, weren't thrilled, by the, Arlington sort of pulling out of, of the process a couple years ago. So I think, again, new leadership at Nova Parks, I think, there's going to be some renewed, I think, energy towards, hey, let's try to make these upgrades. And I think mode separation is an obvious one that I think Arlington especially needs to be considering.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let me give a quick. I'll be very very brief with the just sort of legislative update. We are following a couple different things. The bill that we care most about is a House bill that it's called the Bike Safety Omnibus, and it includes a couple of different provisions. It would authorize the safety stop, more commonly known as the Delaware yield or the Idaho stop, just on stop signs, not on stop lights. It would clarify the rules around riding two abreast, and it would allow bicyclists to utilize the leading pedestrian interval at intersections in which there is an LPI. Bicyclists in the roadway would be able to take advantage of a little bit of a head start. All pretty simple things that we've been working on for a couple of different years. That has passed the House. It passed Senate Transportation Committee, and it is in the Senate Finance Committee this week. And so we don't expect there to be any hiccups. And we're keeping our fingers crossed. You never know when it comes to that full Senate vote, but we're feeling pretty good about that bike safety omnibus. Certainly never hurts to email your senator. You might see an action alert if you're on WAVA's email list or VBF's email list this week or next week. But excited about that. The other couple of bills that we are tracking is a bike signal face. So currently Virginia has some weird restrictions, and so we can't use that bicycle signal. If you've biked in, for example, DC, you see it from time to time, different intersections, a dedicated bike signal, a walk signal and a bike signal. So for Virginia to be able to use that more widely, it might be used in a couple places on a pilot basis. They had to officially authorize it. So that understandably has not, elicited any controversy. So that's going to sail through, I think. There are a couple of different automated camera enforcement bills, like I want to say 5 or 6 that are still sort of floating around, still alive. They're sort of converging in one sort of direction, right? Some of them have been amended, and I think what we're headed towards is no real major expansion in where cameras can be deployed, but a little bit more guardrails in terms of the kinds of things that the funding can be used for and how often they need to be calibrated. So just sort of building up some more guardrails, and there may be some small expansions if certain bills pass that might, especially in Northern Virginia, that would allow for a little bit broader use in sort of zones that have basically corridors that have like a high crime history. So that's the only real expansion we might see to the camera, the larger camera program in the Commonwealth. And so, I think our in general bike advocates stance on the camera stuff is like, we want to, obviously we don't want to see the program end because it has a critical impact on safety, but it's also like, we're not the experts on what should or shouldn't be the guardrails. I mean, obviously, anything about like data, we want to protect data, but like beyond that, it's like we're, whatever folks think are the right parameters for calibration, whatever. That's not our fight to fight. So I mentioned the safety omnibus, I mentioned the bike signals, I mentioned cameras. The fourth thing, and this is relevant to something that I was talking about earlier when we were talking a little bit about e-bikes and e-motos. There was an effort in Richmond, a senator in Loudoun County who put together a sort of, I'll say it was well-intentioned but misaimed bill that would have required a lot of like onerous and new regulation of all bunches of e-bikes, including, yes, the overpowered ones, but also, bikes that, parents may be using to take their kids to school, right? Like it would have sort of swept up everything that had a motor into this regime. And we were able to sort of, connect with the senator and talk through it and like ultimately get him to amend his bill or to sort of pause his bill and instead join a different bill that is calling for a stakeholder group to be convened to look into this issue with, outside of the sort of urgency, short timeline of the General Assembly, but to pull together a stakeholder group this spring, talk through the issues this summer and try to come up with some legislative recommendations heading into next year that, we can all sort of agree on, that doesn't sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you will, right? It doesn't put unnecessary restrictions on, the very, very much reasonable kinds of e-bikes we want to see and are seeing, while also still like, hey, we agree, we do need to get a better grip on, these devices that can go 40 miles an hour, right? Like that's not an e-bike, right? That the law is already pretty clear, but hey, how do we crack down and make sure that we don't see 14-year-olds riding these really overpowered things? How do we make sure that there are sort of restrictions in place? And so we're really excited that we were able to sort of head off the kind of worst impulses in terms of trying to deal with this issue, and are really, as a bike advocate myself, as an owner of 2 e-bikes, I'm very excited to really dig into this and try to get a hold of this because I agree, it is it's tricky and it's a growing issue. So we do need to get a hold of it, but we need to not get a hold of it in the extremely compressed and chaotic environment of the General Assembly session. So I'll pause there.
Thanks, Kevin. A lot of good info, and thanks for following through with that. So I think, overall, I think just a couple of thoughts from me. I was following one of the first one that you mentioned around some of the bike legislation changes. I think one thing that I found interesting was just how few words were changed in the legislation and how big of an impact that makes. So, I sort of had this assumption that it'd be very long and lengthy, but it really was just like 5 to 10 words per change.
It's
And
true.
then-
A lot of, especially with things like writing to abreast. I mean, it really is just like, it was just these like, sort of little vague statements. And it's like, okay, if we can just like fix those 3 sentences, like, oh, there you go. We've solved the problem. So yeah, the magic of amendment.
Awesome. And then, yeah, for the sake of time, I won't share any more thoughts, but I have a few. But hopefully, I think this whole bike versus motorcycle discussion can be clarified over time and doesn't go in the wrong direction. And appreciate you taking the lead in that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. No, we are we're like I said, we're excited to spend some time, and really grateful that we didn't pull a New Jersey here and just jump in without really thinking about the consequences. So anyway, well, appreciate getting a few minutes here to talk with y'all. If anyone has further questions, please feel free to email me. You should all again, if you're on WABA's emails, you probably know my email address, but it's just my first name dot last name at waba.org. But happy to talk more about any of this stuff.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, so we already covered 2 of the 4 last business items, and I'm hoping we can just cover them fairly quickly in the last couple of minutes here. The first was around the South George Mason Drive and South 4 Mile Run Drive intersection study, and the second was around the Crystal City metro station closure, as well as the which is part of the entrance project. I don't know who was going to cover those, but I don't know. Yeah, whoever that was, you can take that on.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. The South George Mason Drive and 4 Mile Run Drive intersection study has been completed. I just checked the website. It looks like they haven't posted the study document yet. They also mentioned that there's going to be like a project overview video attached as well. So I'm not sure when exactly that'll be posted, but keep an eye out for that. The CC to DCA base concept design we talked about earlier. Comments are due from both committees by May 1st. And then the last update is just a reminder that the Crystal City Metro Station is closed for the next few weekends. And so is the DCA and Metro Station for 3 weekends listed on the agenda, including this weekend in case anybody wanted to fly out. But yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks, Alvin. And I think that sort of gets us into, the sort of general idea of we there's a lot of opportunities for feedback. I think, there's a desire for our groups to provide that feedback. There's many open feedback events happening that are sort of published on the Arlington website. Some of them are very short-lived. We talked about timing today and so on. But I think key thing is, there's a number of SPRCs and so on happening. I think it's just great that, we've got such a large group that is so engaged. Would love to continue having folks provide online feedback, provide feedback in this group, in these broader committees that we are a part of, and sending out letters. So I think, let's just keep that momentum going, because it really feels like there's just more and more coming over the next few months, and many of them haven't opened up yet. So appreciate, thank you for the time and effort you're all putting into that. Were there any other last minute business or announcements from anyone?
I'm just going to mention to the BAC that we have this ongoing project, which we did not discuss today, on bike lane delineation, led by Dana and Aaron, among others. So let's plan to talk about that more over in the next meeting in April. And that's actually good, because it's been so icy and snowy that the bike lanes haven't really been there anyways for us. So People should keep their eyes open, take pictures, put in data, um, and we can cover that in a month. And also, we are working toward a meeting with Arlington Public Schools on vehicle safety. We were trying to get that for April, but it's getting pushed off, issues with dates. So anyway, hopefully that will be soon as well. And I see Eric has a hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to, as thinking about the bike lane delineation, um, that this is probably something that we should connect with Vision Zero on. Maybe even have let Christine know about that. So, just a thought.
That's a good idea. And if we send in a letter in the next few days, it won't be in the next couple, but in the next week or so, if we do a letter, we would definitely include that. So thank you.
One quick question for Elwin. Can you establish whether Arlington is going to rely on us doing report of problems for all of the damage to the bike lanes, or are you guys going to go out and do a survey and just fix it all at once? Just
Yeah, that's a
let,
good question.
just, after you research it, just just send a BAC note out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that. Christine alluded to some, temporary speed humps that got damaged and will be getting replaced with, in kind or with better, more permanent infrastructure. So there's something that we'll probably take a look on with all the facilities that are on the streets. But I can give you a more definite answer at the next meeting.
Well, or if you get the answer next week, just send it out to the to the listserv.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't think we should wait a month before we start doing report of problem tickets if that's what you guys are expecting.
Agreed.
I thought I reported one thing, and I thought I was told that things wouldn't be fixed till April. But anyway, yeah, I think Elwin, that would be probably helpful for everyone. So I think if there's probably similar damage to the pedestrian environment. So I think whatever you hear, I guess let David know.
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I don't see any more hands up. So it is 9:04. Appreciate everyone staying a little bit long, and thank you for the engagement. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye,
Good night.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian, you can make as much noise as you want. Yes, yet again, Microsoft screwed me up and
Nice.
turned off my mic and video, so I have to call in. Well, it was too late. I didn't realize